let's compare like Badwater ultra marathon, 135 miles through Death Valley. The temperatures can hit 120, 130 degrees, fairly low humidity.
But it's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat. Yeah, exactly. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Bing slouches. There we go.
I think not having the drum roll.
I think that's what did it.
Me off.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about. It kind of seems to be swirling because in our area it's still blazing hot, and we've got a couple of really important races this weekend that are also looking to be. Don't panic. Looking to be pretty hot.
Like I've got the weather pulled up right now. And mind you, it's September 26th.
It's fall.
Fall. Yeah. 94, 93, 94, 95, 96, 95.
Without heat index.
Without heat index. No, that's just straight temp.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about how to deal with the extreme heat today so that it doesn't totally demolish your training and racing. Mm-hmm. So we obviously deal with this a lot. So we may know a thing or two about dealing with the extreme heat.
Oh, for sure.
But we'll get into that in just a second. I am Coach Dale Sanford.
I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last decade through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off the couch to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking Facebook and YouTube at buildpeakcompete, or all up on that Instagram at BPC Performance.
Splendid. All right. We will get to the topic of today, but first, a very short edition of Shoutouts.
Shoutouts.
Probably the shortest we've had.
Yeah.
The season's kind of getting
winding down.
Yep,
so for sure.
Last week, Jessica Wang went to Renaissance City Tri, finished second in her age group. So congrats there. You got any?
None for me. We got some folks racing this weekend, cyclocross. So
yep.
Probably end up having a few shout-outs next week, but no.
We got a good luck. We got some good lucks here for all of those heading to Ironman Chattanooga and 70.3 Augusta. We've got several athletes going to those races and a bunch of our local buddies who are heading out to throw down. This is a big reason why we're doing this topic today, because it's going to looks pretty warm there. But before we get into it, we do have another segment of
What the huh?
What the
huh?
Yeah.
What the huh?
What the
And for those that that are listening to the podcast and not the Facebook, there's actually the sweet emoji.
There's two
the
confused
hands up confused emoji.
I'm gonna have to make those. I'm gonna have to make those memojis here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That'll make it even funnier.
Anyway, what the huh?
So there's this lady. We won't put her name in this. You figure it out if you Google it. She got caught cheating at a half marathon in Washington. Not even
State or DC?
State.
Okay.
And I wouldn't even say it was a big race. And it's a half marathon, and she finished second overall female. And then some people posed a complaint and then so they started investigating, and there's photographers out on the course everywhere, blah, blah. And they quickly found out that somewhere along the course, she had stashed her bike. She jumped on her bike, did the far part of the course on her bike, stashed the bike in the woods, and then ran across the finish line. And if you saw the video, she looked like she actually believed she won. And then after she was obviously disqualified, she kind of came out and said that this was not the first time she's done it. She's cheated in
coming clean,
3 or 4 other races. And then she the way she put it, and this is not to poke fun at anybody with anxiety disorder, but she said that she did it because of her anxiety disorder. Like having a bad race would like totally crush her. So that's how she justified the choices she made, even though she realized they were wrong, but she justified those choices.
So it's just like she didn't want to have the thought of having a bad result was too much.
The thought of having a bad result.
Gotcha.
Like on paper. So that leads my question, like, what is in the spectrum of cheaters? What's worse? Like the person who knowingly premeditated cheating. Well, I guess all of it's premeditated, but
pretty much.
I mean, cheating like that or like doping. Like, so what, in your opinion, what would be worse?
I'd say it's the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
equal,
yeah.
Dopers suck.
I mean,
Cheaters.
Dopers are trying to hide it even more. Like, I just don't know how this day and age someone would think they could get away with as much technology, as many camera spots, the mats, the fact that you can check the differences in paces as a person progresses through a course. Like, she probably went from, 9-minute miles to, or was she fairly fast anyway?
I didn't read that much into it, but
suddenly
she still finished second overall in the race.
Suddenly she's going 15 miles an hour?
Yeah, there was definitely discrepancy there.
Yeah.
And there was a mat in the far end of the course that she knew she had to hit, or she could have just cut the course. But she stashed her bike so that she could hit the far end mat. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
You guys weigh in. If you have opinion on that, if you think one is worse than the other.
Blood doping, I guess this would fall under mechanical doping.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, pretty much mechanical doping.
That's crazy, though.
Anyways, so that's that. We'll get to the topic of the day now. So,
on to the meats and potatoes?
Stop. We can't use that.
Oh, that's right. Yams and sweet potatoes.
I think that's a Matt Dixon thing.
Ah, gotcha.
Anyways, so we're hitting these extreme temps still in the fall. So we're going to go through basically our kind of big three things for kind of like before you train or race, and then we'll kind of get into some of the race specific strategy tips and tricks and stuff like that.
Focused a little more on race specific stuff.
The thing you have to consider though is heat and humidity. Humidity is like the multiplier, really. So when the heat index, if you're looking at heat, let's compare like Badwater ultra marathon, 135 miles through Death Valley. The temperatures can hit 120, 130 degrees, fairly low humidity.
But it's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat. Yeah, exactly. And then you compare that to something like Kona.
Yeah.
Kona, it can be 90 degrees and high humidity. So feels like temps can be super high.
Yeah.
110, 120 degrees.
Yeah, here in the Mid-South, that's what we look at. Like, temperature is one thing, but actually looking at what is the feels like temp, what is that heat index at?
Yeah.
Because it can be 15 degrees higher than what you're seeing from like an actual temperature.
And the big thing to consider there is that the higher the humidity, the less evaporation that is happening when you sweat.
I like your example of like what you liken it to. Training and racing in the heat here is like someone's wrapped you in a blanket and chasing you with the hairdryer?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much it. You feel like you're constantly wearing a wet blanket, and then even the air that's hitting you when you're riding is hot.
It doesn't cool you.
It doesn't cool you at all. So that's what happens. There's no evaporation. That's what actually cools your body. The evaporation takes heat off of your skin, out of your body, and cools you. If the sweat just sits on your body, it doesn't steal that much heat. The sweat that comes out, the act of it dripping off of your body is what takes heat with it, right? So if you're an efficient sweater, you actually are, you have an advantage there as far as cooling goes. But high humidity, very little evaporation happening. So, we have to figure out some other ways to stay cool. Realistically, again, I've said this before, your body has a really small range of internal core temperatures that it can handle. And that's why, like, when you start to get really hot, like, you might get a runny nose, you might get, you get kind of like almost like cold and fever. You get cold and flu symptoms when you get really high internal core temperatures or it starts to creep up. So regulating temperature, massive. So the first thing, the number one thing that we can recommend that works time and time again is starting your race or workout fully hydrated.
Yep.
We can't stress that enough because we can't remind people enough as well. Yeah.
Like the more times you hear it, the more there's a chance that you're gonna, remember it, and it's gonna.
Right.
But it's something you got to do every time. And like we mentioned before, it's like I used to think that starting hydrated meant chugging 32 ounces of water and getting out the door, like preloading myself with fluid. But really what you need to be doing is making sure you're preloading with the proper amount, or a super concentrated sodium drink.
Yeah, so if you're talking about, the thing to get here is that I won't say the worst things you can do, but an not less ideal thing you can do is just drink a ton of water the days leading up to a really hot race. You need to make sure that those fluids have a decent amount of electrolytes in them, because especially if you're kind of like on a low volume going into a race, you're not going to be sweating as much, you're not going to be losing as much fluid, and your food will take care of some of that, to keep your sodium topped up. But if you're just pounding in fluids, water, you're diluting blood sodium. So make sure your fluids do have electrolytes in them, especially the last few days before a big race.
And our recommendation for the preload?
Yeah, actual preload would be either the night before and or the morning of. And that's going to be 16, 32 ounces, somewhere between there, so 500 mil to a liter of high sodium concentration fluid. And our recommendation and our buddies at Precision Hydration recommend something higher than 1,000 or higher than 1,000 milligrams per liter concentration. We use the Precision Hydration 1500 as our preload. And that just makes sure that when all that sodium comes into the blood, it pulls more water into the blood, so you effectively have more blood, more or less.
Blood volume,
Yeah, so your blood plasma volumes come up. And then you have more blood to circulate through the body, more blood to cool you. There's a host of benefits to starting off really well hydrated. And in some instances, people are worried about retaining water. Well, guess what? If you're going to have a long day of sweating and it's going to be super hot, it's okay.
Don't think of it as retaining water. Think of it as you're creating a bigger buffer. And that's a good thing. Like you're topping the well off. You're not going with we want the well kind of flowing over almost versus you already starting with a well that's been depleted of fluid. So start topped off, even if it means you're a pound heavier than what you've been weighing, leading up to the race. That's going to be gone in no time.
Yeah, especially if it's a long course race, you can end up,
for sure.
By the time you hit the run, you could be 5 pounds lighter. Easily.
Easily, yep.
So, don't worry about a little bit of extra weight coming into a big day like that. If it's going to be hot, it's going to help you survive. So that's it. I mean, you got to start hydrated. Please don't just pound water.
Don't.
Get the electrolytes in and start it off on the high end. The second big one is Acclamation.
Yeah, this is something like last year I chatted a lot with the guys that were doing Ride to Rosemary. So 5-day, almost a century. It averages over a century per day for 5 days in the heat. It's been hot, the last 3 years I've done it. And one of the things I talked to a person about who's new, that just gotten into riding 6 months before and was doing this ride, was you need to make sure you're spending time riding at the times when you're going to be out there anyway. Don't just ride at 6 a.m. because you're going to be out there at 2 p.m. You need to have some of your rides, and they don't have to be hard rides. You don't have to be out there, trying to put your priority workout at 2 p.m., but spend some time riding in the heat so you can acclimate to that heat. Your body gets used to those temperatures.
Yeah, like when we did our tri camp a couple weeks ago,
Yep.
we made sure that we started the long run, which for some was close to was 3 hours,
Yeah.
at 11 o'clock, because you were going to have to run during that hottest part of the day, which is going to be the case for most people in a long course race.
That's probably one of the biggest mistakes I think that a lot of people make with their training.
Oh yeah.
Is they don't do it consistently at the times that they're going to be out there. Like, we try to make it as good a conditions as we can because it's more fun that way. We try to ride early in the morning so that it's cooler when we get home.
Yeah.
But really, you gotta match what the conditions are going to be.
And for those of you who like train indoors a ton, you got to get out there. You got to get got to get the time in the heat. Otherwise, you're going to suffer.
Yeah, I was hearing a story about, I think it was Froome a couple of years ago. I think it was Froome. I could be wrong on this. But getting ready for the Vuelta de España, which is always super hot.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they would go and do their training rides and then finish it off with just like an hour spin in the sauna.
Yeah.
Like, or a hot shed, or like they were, and just easy. And sometimes they were just going to go and would just go and sit in a sauna, where the body just is getting used to that extra heat, even though it's not putting a lot of physical stress, muscular stress through the body.
Yeah.
It was capping a ride with that heat, and they noticed big benefits from it.
Yeah, and that's why you're seeing pros go to like Kona and Tokyo and all these places that are going to be super hot. They're there 2 weeks early, because realistically, full acclimation takes about 2 weeks. Now, if you're doing longer sessions, you can cut that down to about 5 and 6 days. If you're doing 5 and 6 days of longer prolonged sessions in the heat, you can cut it down. And I think usually at the 6-7 day mark, you're about 90% or a little bit over 90% acclimated. I mean, heck, the newest Garmin's have heat acclimation on them. I don't really know how to use it, but apparently it doesn't do anything for us because it's always hot and humid here. So they're like, oh, well, you're acclimated.
You're still acclimated. Yeah. That's just normal.
Yeah.
You have to wait till the winter time to actually have different data.
It's not like you go anywhere you go from here is cooler. So
yeah, most of the time it is, huh?
I mean, there's not a whole lot to acclimate to. But so if you're going to a race that's going to be hot and humid, either get there early if you can, if it's feasible, or, we're talking necessarily to the people who are like maybe going
traveling
from like
to
Minnesota.
Yeah.
You're like, you train in Minnesota and you're going to Kona.
Yeah.
Try to get there early. And then there's obviously ways like in the past, like when we were training Bennett, he's from Minnesota, and so we'd have him do indoor workouts, wearing extra layers, maybe crank up a heater in there. And
like he was a wrestler trying to cut weight for...
Yeah, it's pretty much... Yeah, but you're still trying to hydrate normally during the workout. You're just getting used to the...
Yeah.
And there was... I read something about like how it might have been Alex Howes or somebody who they would go and like take the team tent and like drop it down and just so they could just fit in it.
Yeah.
And it would just be like this big, like nasty...
But that smelled good.
Yeah, just this big heat tent.
Yeah.
And they would ride for however long in that just to acclimate. But
just on the trainer.
Yeah, so if you do you can acclimate quickly if you're doing longer prolonged sessions in that heat and humidity. But if you're not coming from an area, like if you're training in an area that's not hot and humid, you've got to do something.
Oh yeah, you can't be outside doing rides in 70 degrees and show up and it's 100 plus heat index and expect to perform well. Same thing with during that acclimation process. If you're taking 7 days or 14 days or whatever, don't expect those first workouts to be quality workouts.
Oh, absolutely.
There's an acclimation process that as your body gets used to the heat, you should start seeing numbers come up closer to what you're used to. But those first few, don't expect that. Treat them as easier rides, but know that the body's still going to be stressed, and you'll see it on your heart rate that heart rate to power, if you got both of those going, or heart rate to pace, or it's going to be a bigger gap than you're used to during that acclimation process.
Yeah, I mean, since Nationals was kind of my big thing for the year. So kind of took transition and then kind of getting back into consistency. And I went out yesterday and ran, and I felt terrible because it was like 88 and humid as all get out. So feels like was 100 or whatever. Yeah. And first 3 miles were fine. And then it just went south from there.
Core temperature started rising on you.
I was like, all right, this sucks. I'm going home.
I'm walking home. Yeah. Uber.
Well, when you don't have a goal race on the horizon, it's a lot easier to cut that short.
Oh yeah.
But it was just like, I'm acclimated to this stuff, but I haven't been outside quite as much.
Yep.
And so, going out in the heat, it doesn't stick around if you don't. It's not like once you spend that 14 days in the heat, you're good. I mean, it goes back and forth.
Oh, for sure.
So, one of the other big things you can do, which is like something you'll see a lot of the pro teams do and stuff like that, is pre-cooling.
So you've acclimated, so now you're used to higher temperatures. Yeah. Now your goal is to try to keep yourself as cool as you can.
Yeah, cool the core temperature down as much as you can prior to the event. And there's a lot of strategies for this. The cooling vests you've probably seen out there.
Vests, yep.
Even just drinking cold fluids. There's a couple of good studies out there about testing drinking like slushies prior to, and that really helps kind of keep core temperature down longer. It doesn't necessarily keep it down forever, but helped prolong the increase in core temperature. Another one you can do is like using the cold packs. Like use cold packs and get them on those big arteries. On your neck, carotid artery, and your femoral artery, kind of in your crotchal region. Scientific term.
And hands as well.
Yeah,
hands is also a good one.
But using the cold packs to kind of pre-cool yourself, and then like one of the big ones like for triathletes is sometimes like tip here is if you're in a wetsuit legal race but it's still warm out, don't put that wetsuit on until like you absolutely have to. Know how long it takes you to put it on first, because you don't want to be rushed. But I mean, stay out of it as long as possible, because those things don't breathe. I mean, that's a sauna suit right there. So put it on late, and then if you can carry like cold fluids to the start line, dump cold fluids into the wetsuit, and that'll trap the cold fluids in there for a while, or ice or anything that can keep you cool within that suit, just so you don't start.
It's essentially the same principle that cyclists use with the ice sock. You're putting ice on the body to help keep the body cooler longer, as long as you can. And just those small gains are huge. Psychologically it helps as well.
Any prolonging of increasing core temperature is going to help you out tremendously. So pre-cooling is another big, don't pee in your wetsuit and then expect it. Wait.
You're not allowed to pee in your wetsuit?
No, everybody pees in their wetsuit. I'm just saying don't pee in your wetsuit if you can help it, because that's going to be a lot warmer.
Extra heat.
It's coming from inside. That's 98.6.
I saw this year at I think it was the Tour de France. They had the big fans set up, which I've seen before, like when people are warming up. But these they had blowing like mist. Like there was these massive misting fans.
It's like they have on the sidelines in NFL games.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those are great.
Keeping them super cool.
Yeah. So pre-cooling. So race strategy tips are, there's so much you can do prior to, those are the big things, that'll move the needle there. But during your race, if it is like super hot and it ends up hot, you're just going to have to back it down. I mean, if it's
cool them jets, so to speak.
I mean, it's almost like going to elevation where your body just, your body's working so hard to cool itself. You can't physically push as hard, because one, that added heat is going to increase core temperature. And that could then lead to, heat illnesses, heat whatever, or, anything.
Heat stroke,
Yeah, I mean, your body starts to shut down things when it gets too hot. So if you push too hard, you could end up basically, heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and stuff like that.
Yep.
So you're probably
performance-wise in the long run, that's going to hurt you a whole lot more. Not only put you at a health risk, but that's going to hurt your overall time, if that's what you're really concerned about, a lot more than backing down that effort, riding within a heart rate level and using heart rate versus pace or speed or whatever, or power. But use heart rate and perceived effort as kind of a rev limiter more than I've got to hit this pace, or I got to hit this average speed, or I got to hit this power number, because your body's only capable of doing so much. And if it's using a ton of energy to keep you cool, that's less energy that it has to keep you moving forward. And number one priority is keeping you cool, not moving you forward. Yeah. So you can't fight the internal system there.
Yeah, look at it this way. You have two choices. You can back it down by 10, 15%, or you can walk.
Or you can go till you blow.
Yeah. Or coast. Walk, coast, go down to, 10% of normal, or you can back it down early by 10%. And, you may be a little slower than you wanted to, but...
Long run, you're going to be faster than you would be having to, go to 50%. Going to a walk versus a run, even if your run's 15% slower than what you were hoping to run. Yeah. It's a lot better than walking.
Yeah, and like you said before, if you train with heart rate and you have heart rate running, if you notice your heart rate is substantially higher than it normally is at that effort, your body's working hard. Your body's working hard to cool itself, so you're just going to have to back it down. Yep. Get yourself into a heart rate range that you know is sustainable.
And know that everyone else should be doing that as well. So if you're someone who's just competing based on a time you were hoping to hit, well, time's going to be subject to the course, the conditions, and the heat. I mean, if you battle a headwind for most of the course, you're going to have a slower time than you wanted. Like, you can't guarantee you're going to have perfect conditions to hit a goal time. But, kind of big thing there. Now I'm losing my train of thought here.
You just have to back it down. I mean, there's no I know what I was gonna say.
So for those that are just competing on your own time, you're just gonna have to be okay with your time not being as fast. If you're someone who's going for like an age group overall, everyone else should be backing it down also. So it's not like you're gonna be putting yourself way behind by backing it down. In fact, you'll probably be moving yourself ahead.
If you look at statistics, there's a few people out there that are just crazy about statistics and especially Ironman race statistics and stuff like that. You can look at times, and average times for different races can easily swing 30 to 40 minutes a year. And then you look at it this year it was hot, this year it was a more ideal
temperatures,
or this year there was a stiff wind on the bike, and so a race that's already that long just means that a change in conditions can magnify how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
I mean, so you got to just accept the fact that it's going to be a little bit longer day than you wanted, but it's happening to everyone. Just you have to keep that in your head. Another big thing, one, we've already said start hydrated, but stay hydrated. If you forget to drink and forget to keep putting in electrolytes, you're going to be a hurting unit at some point. So staying hydrated. I swear every time I write a race strategy kind of email to an athlete, it says stay hydrated in there no less than 5 times in different areas.
Yep.
And it's just to hammer it in. And since I've been doing that, I haven't had too many athletes who have had issues. But maybe, I don't know, it was maybe 7 years ago. I had a guy who we had gone and he had played with nutrition, and we had it dialed in in his training, but he got out in the race and forgot to drink enough. He just said, when we went over the race afterwards, he didn't have a good race. And he was like, oh yeah, makes sense, I just forgot to drink. I'm like, how did you forget to drink?
Something I always cue cyclists on, racers is it's really easy to get distracted with the race and like everything going on.
Yeah.
And getting so caught up in that, the strategy, like, you know, watching moves that are going or whatever, and you forget to drink.
Yeah.
And it seems like, oh, you know, I don't forget to drink. I do it on the rides all the time. But you can get into a race situation and be kind of consumed with that whole thing and everything that's going on and neglect to do the basics.
Yeah.
Neglect to manage your race properly.
I've been there.
Yeah, I've been there too.
I've been there. One of the other things that I always tell people to do is freeze bottles. Mm-hmm. If you know it's going to be hot, you can freeze like half a bottle for early use, like, you know, because it's going to melt basically by the time you want it, or a quarter bottle. Just make sure there's ice in it, or just take ice in the bottle with your electrolytes. Keep electrolytes in your bottles.
Lots.
Keep it in. So freeze in half bottles for early use, and then you can freeze full bottles for like later use. So like in case of an Ironman, you're putting in like bottles in T1 and T2, and then you might have extra bottles. Like if you have very specific nutrition that you're using in your special needs bags, freeze them so that when you get them, they're cold. They're still cold.
And insulated bottles can be something that may help prolong the length of time that they stay cool or cold or frozen.
Now, I don't recommend like trying to put a cooler in your special needs bag. Probably, unless somebody will figure that out one day, and then that'll be the hot.
Yeah,
you can send us the royalties.
Yeah, on really hot days, I will start with a frozen bottle in my pocket as well. Like if I know it's a longer ride or race, the one on my back is frozen. I'm drinking out of the stuff that's on my bike. I drink out of the same bottle to start with, just kind of a strategy here. Because if you're splitting it between the two, it takes longer for them to empty. But I always drink out of the same one. It empties. I swap it with the one that's on my back. That's helped keep me cold. By that point, it's no longer frozen, still cold. Swap it out and good to go.
So one of the questions that we do, I've gotten anyways, is like, do I dump the water on me? Do I, what do I, like, should I, or should I? I've heard both ways, dumping water helps or doesn't help. I mean, I've looked at the research, and the little bit of research out there that's on it is fairly inconclusive. So realistically, if it's humid out, dumping water on your body is not going to take heat away, because that water is not going to evaporate. The water running off of you will take some heat away, but it hasn't been shown to like be enough benefit
to cool your
performance.
Skin. Doesn't help cool your skin temperature enough. Yeah. I've not seen research on it.
Yeah, but low humidity, it helps, because that water on your body is going to evaporate quicker and cool you. So, especially if you're coming from like you're not acclimated, your sweat rate hasn't picked up quite as much yet. Dumping that fluid on helps. Yeah. Some people, especially like you'll see like in bad water, people wear the sleeves, and by dumping water on them, they soak the water, or the water stays on there, so there's more to evaporate. So eventually, essentially it cools you a little bit more. So usually high humidity, it doesn't necessarily make a difference. Low humidity, it will make a difference. But my thing is, if it gives you a psychological boost, dump it.
I guarantee you, I'm dumping.
Yeah.
I am, like the initial shock you get when someone squeezes freezing cold water on you, you're like, ooh, and then you're like, that actually felt pretty dang good.
And sometimes the fluids, like if you're later in a race, sometimes the fluids ain't cold anymore.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So like I've gone on in races, and the bottle that I get later is like warm, just super warm.
It's horrible too.
I'm not dumping that on myself. Yeah. That feels terrible.
And even drinking that, you're like, if you can have cold beverages late, it's when you are in a hot spot, like that makes a huge
cold fluids is one thing
difference.
But a lot of times when you're
psychologically,
cold fluids is one thing, but a lot of times late in a race, the cups, even if they're cups sitting out, the cups are all warm
all day.
Like I'm not dumping that stuff on me. No. Like it still feels hot.
And make sure
that wet blanket.
Whatever you're going to dump on yourself, make sure it's not like the drink, the sugar-filled drink
not
on the course.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to be pouring G2 on your body late in
Or oh man, the Gatorade Endurance that they have at most Ironman branded races is so sticky and sugary, and I mean, you make that mistake, you make it once, and you'll finish the race looking like Ben Stiller on Long Camp Polly.
Side note, you know who the person who's really struggling is the person who does grab that drink, doesn't realize that it's the sugar-filled stuff and dumps it all over themselves. That's when you know they're in a spot of bother, so to speak.
Absolutely. So one of the this is kind of a tip that I pulled off of Chris McCormick, and he spent, I don't know how many years trying to crack the code on winning Kona, and then, won it several times. And so one of his big things is, he at first, he just didn't think he could handle the heat. He thought it was like, he's a bigger triathlete. So, and people told him, like, you're just too big for the heat. And one of the big things that he made sure that he did eventually was to, create a cool environment for himself. And that's why later you always saw him wearing a visor. He always had that visor, open head, so it can cool.
Keeping sun off his eyes.
And he always had dark shades on. And he's like, I got the darkest sunglasses I could find, and just made everything appear cooler.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped him, mentally more than anything.
Yeah.
But
something else kind of in line with that, but not really. I mean, it's not making your environment cooler, but sunscreen. Don't forget to put sunscreen on, which, you can tell. You go spend a day at the beach and get sunburned, and you realize how much that drains you.
Yep.
You don't want that happening, in a hot day, magnifying that by getting the body jacked up with a sunburn.
I actually I read some research. There were like 3 studies on sunscreen, on whether or not it messed with your thermoregulation or anything like that, and all of it was inconclusive. There was not like any, it didn't necessarily affect sweat rate. It didn't affect thermoregulation. In one case, they said that it improved skin temperature, like decreased skin temperature, and then in another one it said it increased skin temperature, and then another one was like it did nothing.
Yeah.
So pretty inconclusive. So along with what you said, put the sunscreen on. Don't end up sunburned. You'll be sorry. I've done a race sunburned, and it went horribly.
Yeah.
So get the sunscreen on. Last little tip, and this is kind of more because of, all the people who are out there doing Ironman Chattanooga and getting ready to do Kona and all that stuff, is if they have ice and ice sponges, frozen sponges and stuff like that on the course, take them.
Use them.
Yep. Take them. Use them. Put ice down your clothes. Take those frozen sponges and get them on your carotid artery and your femoral artery. A sponge in your crotch is not usually real easy to run with, but, throw ice down your shorts, throw it in. I mean, do whatever you can with what they have out there that's cold to continue to cool you. Take it every aid station.
Yep.
I want to put this out there one more time. Like, if you can keep moving even at a slow jog, run, whatever, that's still faster than being reduced to a walk.
Mm-hmm.
So just dial it back, focus on staying hydrated, and focus on staying cool.
Regulate your heart rate. Yep.
And you will be fine.
Use that. Yep, for sure.
Anything else?
I think that covers it, man.
That was short enough that you could soak it up on the car ride. So.
Mm-hmm. And if you want extra, like we also dove into this topic, our first ever. We talked about this, but it was a lot more less on like the race strategy side. We dived in a little bit deeper on electrolyte stuff, prehydrating.
Yeah, just listen to the podcast. Don't watch the video. The
video was not.
We weren't primo
yet. But yeah, listen to the podcast. Number 1, if you want more information on this topic.
Yeah. All right, folks. We appreciate you hanging out, listening, watching.
Stay cool.
We will catch you guys next time. Good luck this weekend.
Dominate.
Adios.